As someone that does not have a built-in central air and heat for this house right now, this episode was very relatable to me because it has been hot. Extremely hot, like these past couple of weeks. Today is actually the only day in a while to where I'm not sweating so bad and I'm like this. Like every second while I'm recording a video, I'm having to cut in between it and just, wipe sweat off because I'm sweating so bad. So I'm really happy how relatable this episode was, how educational it was, and just how, it was done. Because Heatstroke is a very big deal. Many typically don't think too much about it. They don't think the heat could be really that bad sometimes. They overlook it. Like, they'll be working, and doing something out in the field or whatever. They could be outside doing gardening or, mowing a lawn, whatever. And people don't realize that when it's really hot, like it's 90 to 100 degrees, that could easily cause a heat stroke if you're not, having proper liquids enter into your body. So this episode, even though it seemed very scary and it seemed like it was over dramatic, in a lot of ways, this is actually what happens to the body. Like, cells at work, it definitely, it can be a little bit dramatic. It can definitely, exaggerate in a lot of ways. But in some cases, a lot of it's legit, and that's what your body does. And this episode is a perfect representation of what your body does when you are dehydrated. It's a serious thing. It happens to a lot of people. And people, like I said, don't think about that too much. Like, example, let's say you're going outside and you're having a car trip with your family. Maybe you're going out to, like, some form of distant town or whatever, and all of a sudden, the car breaks down. You're in the middle of, driving. You're in the middle of nowhere. Your car breaks down. You don't really have any drinks whatsoever. You have a couple of children in the back with you that you have to also be in the car with. And the car breaks down, and you're like, oh, crap, what do we do? It's a very deserted road. Nobody's coming. We're broken down in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's around. And you realize that it's a very hot day. Well, you could potentially get dehydrated in that type of situation. So this type of stuff here is scary because it can happen like that. Personally, I've never gotten a heat stroke to the point where I ever had to, let's say, go to the hospital or anything. I've never been in that type of situation unless I was very young and I just don't know about it. But I've never had that type of situation where I've been in the hospital because of heat. But I have been in many situations to where I felt like I've dehydrated and I had to drink a lot of water. So it is something that I understand. And because of, the living situation here with no central air and heat, it gets extremely hot, especially since I'm on the second floor, which means it can get even hotter than normal because, as you know, heat rises. So yeah, it can be very smothering and awful. But yeah, this episode, relatable and educational like it always is. And I was just like, holy crap, you guys, stay dehydrated. I mean, after you watch this episode, you're like, you're literally ruining your body, and your cells are freaking out. They don't know what to do. Like, the way the cells reacted in this episode, if our cells had sentience, and they were able to think like we do, and they were, really like how it was in cells at work, then I would understand the reaction, because the lack of water to just, burning heat, you gotta imagine how much hot it must be inside of your body at this time. I mean, your body is constantly at, a constant temperature, a very hot temperature, and when it gets to a certain temp, it really can get bad for you. And I just like how in this episode, the episode really kind of showcased how your body would react to this given situation, and that when it tries to sweat or cool down the body, or it tries to push the blood to the surface or whatever to kind of regulate your body, it can get very bad very quickly, because as, they're continuously trying to sweat, you're losing more liquids, and if you're really dehydrated, it's going to be even worse. So, just a lot of bad things overall, and it even showcases that you also do need some salt, even if you're dehydrated. Many might think that salt would be bad for you, but in a lot of ways, salt and water is what you really do need, with some sugar as well, and this episode really wanted to showcase that. Now, speaking of which, I like how at the end of the episode, many, if this was a different series, might think that was kind of like it was pulled out of nowhere, and, oh, it's just convenient that, everybody was saved at the last given moment of this episode. For instance, the syringe coming in through the skin and then entering into the vein or whatever, giving an IV drip to where, nutrients and stuff can come into the human body and cool it down. that type of thing does happen every so often. When people have a stroke, they collapse or they faint, you have it to where, they're rushed to the hospital, they're given an IV drip, and then everything works out. They're completely fine. And so if this was any other story, many would be complaining about this episode saying, oh, they just got saved thanks to plot reasons. And yes, in a way, it was saved thanks to plot reasons, because dehydration and heat stroke can sometimes be lethal, and people can't really make it, and they will die. But most of the time, people do get medical attention because there usually is someone around to help them out. There's usually someone on the phone to call, the ambulance, the ER, or whatever, to get people there. So, I think this is a very realistic take on how people handle heat stroke, how the body would react, and it just really shows the, how dire it is if you don't keep liquids within you. Always have a bottle of water with you when you're going out in the hot sun or whatever. Even if it's out in the front yard and you're mowing, it's still good to have, let's say, a bottle of water and keep drinking water, or it could be really bad. You might not ever wake up again. Now, let's talk about the little nitty-gritty scenes of this episode. I do like how in this episode, white blood cell was really, really affected. Like, you could see how he wasn't really able to function properly in this episode. He was constantly sweating, he couldn't really move properly, and, the bacteria was just constantly outrunning him, and even using the blood flow within the human body to progress through the body a lot faster than it normally would, which is very similar to how poison is done within the body. Like, how you have this common thing to where if you freak out, let's say if you get a snake bite or whatever, you could speed up the progress of blood, circulating through your body because your heart's pumping faster because of anxiety, and you can have the poison just spread a lot quicker. That's kind of how it was. Basically, the blood was pumping and it was going so fast and all that because of the heat that it caused it to where, the bacteria was able to just move so quickly throughout the human body, and white blood cell was chasing it down. So, there was some realistic looks at how bacteria can act if, blood is pumping a lot faster than normal. It can get away, and it can also spread a lot quicker to, let's say, different parts around your body. Now, if there's one thing that this episode did make me wonder about, it made me wonder about how the brain is for cells at work. Because we don't really know. We haven't really seen the brain cells in this series, and you think that would be a thing we would have already gotten to see by now, but we haven't actually seen that at all at this point in time, and I'm kind of curious, though, exactly how they'll be depicted. I mean, will they be some type of, alien life forms that can, give commands to anybody at any given moment throughout the body? I'm kind of curious, because the brain does technically initiate orders to everything that goes on in our body. Like, it's our brain that causes our heart to keep pumping. It's our brain that tells us to, subconsciously, continuously breathe with our lungs and, have our blood pump through our body. So, when you think about it, I wonder when the brain is actually going to be introduced. Like, the section of the brain, like brain cells or whatever, or will that never be introduced at all? And I wonder how their personality would be, since the brain technically would know a lot of information about the outside world. I wonder how it would react to, knowledge of what really humanity is, what the body really is, and all that, what's functioning. Kind of curious about that. Now, another big point I do want to talk about, though, is, the host. Now, the body, the host, the person that is the main host of all these cells, it makes you wonder, what life must they be living to go through all of these issues? Now, I've already heard through the community and all that telling me in the comments that apparently there's speculation that most likely the host, the body, is probably a very young child. And the reason why is because at a young age, children are introduced to bacteria, viruses, and all that at an early age, and they get sick a lot. It's the reason why, children at such a young age have to get so many vaccines. They have to, go through a lot of colds and sicknesses just to be able to eventually get to where we're at, in adulthood, for we can pretty much be okay, handle the flu or anything like it's nothing with just a little bit of medicine. And many have speculated that most likely the host body is a child. But even if that is the case, heat stroke, however the child got heat stroke, it makes you wonder if it really is, how did that happen? And was it a hot car issue? I really don't know. I don't know how dark this series wants to get, but it makes you wonder how, if it is a child, how did a child get heat stroke and get unattended like that? Why wasn't there proper fluids given to the child if, they were experiencing heat stroke? Now, a lot of questions I have, but we're probably not going to get those answered But still, it was a really good episode. I like the information it gave me. I like how, simple it was. But I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.